The Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative has called for a just, fair and equitable energy transition that will prioritize Nigeria's national interest. At the National Dialogue on Energy Transition convened by NATI, Dr. Oji said Nigeria, in its considerations to shift to renewable energy, must identify opportunities in its untapped oil, gas and mining resources. Dr. Oji welcomed the prompt decision of the federal government to unfold the National Energy Transition Plan. Joining us to discuss this development is Arise News analyst Kayode Otitoju. Good to have you on News Day. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So is NATI playing its role effectively when it comes to, shaping the public debates and government policy on this energy transition? What do you think?
I think it is. Nigeria
Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. It's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is.
I think they are playing their role in trying to maintain transparency in the area of energy, most especially the oil and gas, and being an agency to see to how we transit from fossil fuel to renewable energy. They are already looking at the impact on our comparative advantage, which is an area of fuel, fossil fuel, oil and gas, that if we are to move from non-renewable energy, which is coal, fossil fuel or petrol, diesel, to say solar and water, hydro or wind energy, what will be the effect on Nigeria? Because since we have comparative advantage by being an oil and gas producing country. So he was already saying, okay, we have to tread softly so that we don't lose job for people who are employed, in the oil sector. We don't lose revenue, which is still the mainstay of our economy. And there's some other bodies within Africa are already supporting the view of Dr. Oji, the head of NATI, that we can't use one cap fits all head type of thing, because even in Africa, the total energy consumed is still within 600 kilowatt hour per annum, as against average of 3,200 kilowatt hour per annum of the world average. So then again, we account for 3.3 of the total emission, gas emission and whatever in Africa, vis-a-vis the developed economies. So why should we use the same momentum in transiting from non-renewable energy to renewable energy? And I think that's what the argument on transition is all about.
And it's a very important point and important argument that you've put forward, because when one reads this and reviews it, you get to understand the magnitude of international and foreign investment that would need to come in for Nigeria and other African countries and other developing countries to be able to shift from what's currently happening into the renewable energy sources. And, when you read about it, it starts to feel a lot like structural adjustment program in a different packaging. What are your thoughts on that? I know your strength is history, so I know you can take us into structural geography. Okay, but I know you can unpack. You can maybe compare those.
In Glasgow last year, the group of 26 countries came together and put, a sort of index that must be achieved, by the year 2022, okay? And they call it COS 26 because it's 26 country. And they are saying, okay, before CO 27.
Let's talk 27. Mm-hmm.
So, those 26 countries will have stopped giving any aid or any funding to other countries on development of fossil fuel related energy. So now what's the question now?
So the question is, doesn't this give people flashbacks of the structural adjustment program, which in essence said that Africa needs to create such and such systems. In order for Africa to develop, Africa is going to need funding. Before we can give you the money to achieve the things you want to achieve, we need you to satisfy XYZ conditions, which of course we saw a number of African countries that fell under, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, South Africa, those who benefited from that structural adjustment program from IMF and so forth. We saw what it did to economies. Economies crashed across Africa. So we've recovered from that, but now it looks like here we are again in a situation where these Western powers are again creating terms and conditions and saying, okay, you guys need to move away from fossil fuels. We're not going to finance that anymore. We'll finance other things, but of course that's going to come with terms and conditions that may not be favorable to African countries. So that's what I'm saying. How do you feel we navigate that and balance that? Like you're saying, a lot of the foreign investment, the foreign aid for the oil and gas sector, for example, is going to stop. It spells catastrophe for us, doesn't it?
Really, I think I may be wrong. I think really, since we had already set year 2060 as our own
that's our target to eliminate carbon emissions.
To eliminate carbon emission. That means this is 2022. That means we still have almost 40 years. Am I right? Almost 40 years to gravitate towards meeting. The developed countries may be looking at 2030 or 2040, so we still have time. And now in terms of funding, well, we have to be self-reliant, and there are so many ways we can cut use of energy that if at all they don't support so much, we can make better use of what we have. Like for instance, you need energy for transportation, for heating or cooling in the house, for lighting. Okay? Lighting is already more or less taken care of in Nigeria because we are now more of a LED bulb as against those watt bulb that consume so much energy.
Yes.
So by the time we can achieve, say, 90% sustainability in lighting by way of how we have adjusted ourselves through, the appliances we are using. And again, mind you, we are blessed with hydro. We are blessed with hydro. Now the Niger and Benue are overflowing their banks, and they are causing flooding. It means we have the water. We have the water to turn the turbine. Okay, if we can just try to make other things that will make it usable and again be all the year round source of energy. So in fact, you don't really know your strength until you are constrained, by this spoon feeding, by developed countries.
Well, in the 9th edition of the Nigeria Energy Conference, they had this. The theme was affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy through collaboration. Are you content with the level of collaboration that you've seen, in terms of this transition to actually make it affordable, reliable, and sustainable based on this?
Well, we have been participating in all the conferences. Like about a month ago or so, the vice president was in US and to take part in the discussion of this energy transition. And again, I think Nigeria, as government, has already set a commission to look into this. And so I think we may not be the real proponent of green energy. But so far, so good. We are not doing badly. For instance, Nigerians are now embracing the use of solar. Last Thursday, I was at the commissioning of one pharmacy in Lekki, big place, the power, both the lighting, then the cooling system and everything powered by solar. And the solar room is no more than 100 square meters. No, 10 square meters. 10, that's 10 square meters. It's no more. And it powers the whole place. So we are already moving from ordinary lighting to even powering some, equipments. And by the time, within the next, if the momentum should be sustained, in another 5 years, we may even be ahead of some of those developed countries because we have a sort of comparative advantage in being within the equatorial region where the sunlight is all the year round. Even during the rainy season, you have enough sunlight to handle solar, okay? And it's cheaper. You may be thinking, okay, the cost of getting the solar panel and the batteries that will store if you compare that to what you spend daily on, say, diesel, or what Geregu or power plant will be using in getting diesel to power the turbine or natural gas, in the end, you will know that the fixed cost may be high initially, but the running cost is close to zero.
Mr. Otitoju, okay, let's take the conversation down to the grassroots who form the majority of our population. Because I understand, from a middle class perspective and from a corporate perspective, shifting to solar and so forth is a viable, it's a real conversation. But when you look at the statistics, 22% of the emissions currently coming out of Nigeria are from firewood cooking. So 175 million Nigerians, according to this particular research.
That's coming from Nigeria.
Coming in
but
Nigeria.
It's not a global contribution.
The global contribution, of course, is much less.
Yeah,
but
it's less than 3.
Exactly. Yeah. But in the context of here locally, 22% of the carbon emissions that we are generating in Nigeria are from firewood cooking. So the goal is that by 2030, we should replace 75% of firewood to LPG, right? And then by 2060, 100% electric and biogas cooking. I mean, let's just look at the state of the nation. These are the targets, these are the goals. I'm just reading statistics.
Yeah.
Realistically.
The reality,
yes.
the reality is gas is expensive. It's expensive. I mean, it's as expensive as petrol.
Exactly.
If not more. Firewood, yes, once you can. In the rural areas, firewood is ubiquitous. You get it everywhere. In the urban centers, yes, we can use gas. In terms of emission, the emission that really constitute a problem are the one from industries and factories. Those are the, okay, for instance, a little me, for instance, if I'm cooking with firewood, okay, the smoke, whatever,
the problem is that there's 175 million of little me's.
Yeah, but they don't do it all. They don't do it
at the same
simultaneously. They don't do it.
Unfortunately, I don't know the chemistry of it. Yeah.
The real problem is the extent and the quantum of heat that is being generated from a point, not the one that fritter away, you know, within 2 or 3 meters, you know, from the point of generation. So now, the solar is becoming popular.
In the urban areas.
In the urban area. And again, the electricity is not as bad because there is a means of storing it now in inverter, through inverter and battery. So I give you a personal experience. About 8 years ago, one of my kids came home from abroad and found that actually we were paying so much on electricity. Mind you, she did her PhD in control and dynamical systems from Caltech, California Institute of Technology. And she said, you know, the first thing that we do for you is get inverter. And he got someone to come and, install inverter and battery, just 4 batteries. And when NEPA comes, no solar, we are not connected to solar. When NEPA comes, when electricity through PHCN comes, the inverter, transmit the energy and store it in the battery. When they take light, I can tell you for 48 hours, we have light. And what did she do? She first made sure that we change all our bulbs to energy.
LED.
What do you call it now? Energy
saver.
Energy saver.
Okay.
And made sure that we didn't connect the inverter to our pumping machine and our deep freezer. But we have the luxury of watching TV, having fans,
yes,
and again, we open windows. We don't sleep with AC. So if everybody can do that,
yes,
there will be real reduction.
There's a lot of takeaways from your experience. Yeah. Thank you for that input.
Thank you.